Welcome to Grow Her Wings, a podcast by the Malou Project, a 501c3 based in Jacksonville, Florida, with a mission to connect girls to aviation. We are your hosts, Jen and Carrie, and we invite you to join us as we meet new people, talk to old friends, and learn new lessons on the path to inspire more of us to grow our wings.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Malou Project's podcast. Today, we're interviewing two local aviators here. We've got Meredith Holladay, owner of Holladay Aviation, and her father, Nick Turkowski. We're going to talk about aviation and how Meredith got involved and how Nick was instrumental in that, and we look forward to just kind of finding out more about them. Once again, Malou Project is a 501c3 nonprofit located here in Jacksonville, Florida. We connect girls to aviation. All right. So thank you both for being here. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Meredith. So we've already sat down and chatted a little bit about how you guys got into aviation. So I will hope that you'll be willing to share a little bit of that with us today. Again, Mr. Chernovsky, Nick, you were first to catch the aviation bug, right? So would you be able to tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you were born into this kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, well, I think I was interested in airplanes ever since I was crawl. I was born in Hamburg, Germany, and in 1946. So by the time I was around 4 years old, was around the time of the Berlin Airlift.
Yeah.
And Hamburg was the primary route. I found out later. I didn't know that over going to Berlin, and it was like a beehive of airplanes. Pretty much, and I was just like this all the time. I was fascinated. So that was my first interest.
Okay. And then how did that develop out as you were growing up?
And later, when we came to the States, immigrated to the United States, and we were in New York, and of course, where we lived was was in the metropolitan area, so we had the airplanes going into New York area, as well as there were a lot of local airports, and we had small airports, general aviation airports, even some grass strips around where we lived at that time. So
okay.
I just kind of had it around me all the time. It was always interesting.
And you have this Air Force T-shirt on.
Yes.
and why are you wearing an Air Force T-shirt today?
This is one of my favorite shirts. But I kind of always try to wear something a little, either commemorating the military in one way or the other, or something patriotic.
Yeah.
And my Air Force experience was one of the best times I think of my life.
Do you think that was part of the reason that you were interested in aviation, or that you were able to pursue that?
I think my interest in aviation kind of led me to the Air Force.
Got it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I enlisted, it was right around the time of the Vietnam War, and I went through basic training in Lackland, Air Force Base in Texas, and eventually I was stationed in Vietnam. I did a tour in Vietnam.
Thank you for your service.
For a year. Thank you. And then after that, I was at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And
what was stationed out there then?
Excuse me?
What was the airplane that was stationed out there then?
Those were B-52s.
B-52s back then too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So B-52s, KC-135s.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that was pretty much what we had there, and actually even some old KC-97s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not even sure I know what that is.
Yeah, that was basically the military version of the Boeing 337 airliner, which was made into a tanker.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, it kind of went from C-7A Caribous in Vietnam, which was a twin engine radial engine transport.
Yes.
STOL. And to B-52s.
It's a big range of aircraft there.
But anyway, that was I like my time in the military.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for saying that. When did you decide to start flying?
Pretty much a couple of years after I got out of the military.
Okay.
I mean, my wife and I got married just after I came back from Vietnam. And we were in Louisiana for a while. And then when I got out of the service, we went back to New York. So I had to get settled with finding a job and
sure,
so on and so forth. But Meredith came along, and I guess it's like I was working near Westchester County Airport, one of my planes, New York, which was like a major corporate field, and it was actually during the war days, that was one of the training fields for the Air Force, and in fact, most of pretty much everything on the field at that time was old Air Force hangars and so forth. Even the airline terminal was a military Quonset hut.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is it still like that?
Yeah.
No.
That's gone, and it's
too bad. Okay.
They've got a modern terminal there now and everything. But I just one day, it was like probably about. In fact, I remember it was in the wintertime, and I just walked into the FBO there, and it was like after work, so like around 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, I want to find out about flight training. And, this one of the instructors there, Al Hill, wound up being my instructor, talked to me about it. He said, when do you want to start? I said, is now okay? He said, let's go.
Perfect.
So my first duel was at night.
No kidding. Yeah, wow. And then, I mean, if it was at night, that's gorgeous, right? Like the lights and everything. How cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, how long did it take you to get your license, and what did you want to do with it?
I really didn't know. I mean, I had a full-time job. I knew of course, I had the GI Bill, which allowed me to take flight training because I really couldn't afford it.
And that's still something today people can do, is use a GI Bill for
And so I just decided, the first thing I decided, I was just going to get as many ratings as I could. So I just went, one after the other, private commercial instrument. I got my multi.
Oh, wow.
And I was kind of getting to the point where I didn't think I could, fly for the airlines or anything like that. And I had a good job. We had a family and everything.
Yeah.
So I just want to see how I could incorporate it into my life, and we did. We used it to travel. We went places, and then as I had my own business, I used flying in my business to go to meetings.
Yeah, and how old was Meredith? I mean, did you integrate her into this lifestyle?
Well, I got my private in 1978.
Okay.
So Meredith was 6 years old.
Okay. And so, did you take her flying? Where was she in all of this?
Okay. In the Cherokee, she was right beside me in the right seat.
And I remember all of this
really
very vividly.
Yeah. What was that like for you?
Yeah.
It was amazing. Like the way I've described it to people now, and my husband and I have a daughter who's now the same age I was when I learned to fly with Dad, although me being the mom and already a pilot, she's been flying with me since I was pregnant. So she's getting an earlier start even than I did. But it was just great to have that be part of our family recreation. I looked forward to it on the weekends. Of course, I was in school, kindergarten or first grade, whatever. But on the weekends, I really looked forward to going and hanging out at the airport.
Yeah,
I didn't care what we did. I just wanted to hang out at the airport. Sometimes Dad was flying, and Mom and I would sit there and watch him, flying around the pattern. Sometimes we'd have brunch at the little cafe or, whatever. I just really took to it.
Yeah, because we talked about that a little bit, right? And also, I think you talked about a house that you had at the end of the runway with the radio?
No, so our house was on the final approach to one of the main runways at Westchester.
Okay.
So they would fly right over our porch. And we'd sit there with the handheld radio listening to tower approach control. I don't know what we picked up at the time, but I just remember hearing the radio communications all the time. So what I tell students now is, for me personally, that was the easiest part of flight training, because I'd been hearing all this jibber jabber since I was 6.
Yeah.
So talking on the radio was like, no problem, I'm on it. Whereas usually mic fright is one of the things that people are a little tentative about when they first learn to fly, but that was the easiest thing for me, just because it was like a second language.
That's an important language to have,
Yeah.
too. Yeah. We like to say, it doesn't matter how good of a pilot you are, as long as you sound good on the radio, right?
That's it.
That's the key. Yeah. And so
it opens many doors.
Yeah, it does, and it opens you up to be less stressed about some of the other things and learn faster on some of the
for sure.
hand and pedal thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So when did you start flying? You took her up, and then did you just continue flying with Meredith until?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we flew either on weekends or when we had time off, right up until the time Meredith went to college.
And did you go to school to become a pilot?
No, so interestingly, I didn't really, well, I'll tell you one thing. So when I was applying for colleges or looking at colleges, so this was in the late 80s when I started thinking about it. So there's no internet, so you had to get the magazine, and Dad had all the flying magazines at home, AOPA and flying and whatever else he had. He's got stacks a mile high. So I must have gotten a card or sign up here to get a catalog from some of the aviation schools, including Embry-Riddle. And they have obviously since changed a whole lot since then, but I remember receiving the catalog, and there was not a single female face in the whole catalog, and I threw it away.
Wow.
And said, well, I guess that's not really for me, so I went and got a degree in journalism from the University of Maryland, which in hindsight I'm very grateful for. I don't think I would have appreciated or been as successful now had I gone to an aviation school that early on. I feel like, the way my career progressed, I'm very thankful for that, because the writing that I learned how to do has helped me in this business. I can do all our communications. So that was very helpful.
Well, not to brag though, that also led to Meredith being able to kind of freelance, and she wrote a lot of aviation articles.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, aviation's a small world, and you never know where paths are going to lead.
Sure.
So it turns out a very prominent aviation writer also had a mutual friend of mine from college.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of got me in the door to do some pretty significant freelance work, which was very rewarding.
So when did you decide to start flying?
So I wanted to take lessons in college at Maryland. University of Maryland is right next door to the College Park Airport, which is one of the most beautiful historic airports in the country. And at the time, they were giving lessons there. But shortly after I inquired, the city council, I think, had some dispute or whatever. I don't know what exactly happened, but the flight school there shut down because I think neighbors were complaining about the noise because the population was increasing about there as the campus increased in size.
Okay.
So taking flying lessons during college wasn't in the cards for me, and frankly, I didn't have the money to do it anyway, even if I had been able to. But nonetheless, Dad and I were always kind of talking about flying, or I always kind of had it in my blood that I wanted to do it. Yes, so I didn't start flying until much later in life because the resources weren't available to me.
Okay.
So once I had been making a decent amount of money in the IT industry, I decided, okay, now's the time for me to do something for myself, and this is what I want to do. Okay. My first flying lesson with an instructor, now mind you, I've been flying with Dad all this time, so I feel like I'd learned a lot up until then, but my first, actual lesson sitting in the left seat of a Cessna with an instructor over here was 3 weeks before 9/11.
Wow.
So I didn't get much flight time in before everything came to a grinding halt, and this was in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. This was at an airport in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Yeah.
So pretty much my entire flight training experience was dealing with that, which some people would think oh, that's terrible. You know, it took me a lot more than 40 hours to get my private, I think, and partly because of, various issues with early instructors. That's kind of typical in this industry.
Sure, yeah.
And plus just having to deal with all the regulations and, that were imposed upon us post 9/11 for flying in the DC area.
Yeah.
But by and large, I think it was a blessing in disguise from a training perspective, because you had to be so on top of your game with communications, with flight planning.
Yeah.
You had to be patient. I mean, I remember the first couple weeks after the airspace opened up, there would be a line of Cessnas with the engine shut down and the doors open and everybody on their cell phone calling for a clearance. It was like trying to get Springsteen tickets on Ticketmaster on the phone before there was the internet. That's what it felt like. Let me on.
Yeah.
So, but it was a great experience. I really enjoyed flying there and met all kinds of wonderful people. I was in a flying club, and it was that flying club experience that I think that did lead me to becoming an instructor and leading to, this life that we have right
Why
now.
Why do you think that the club was so pivotal?
Just the support. It wasn't your typical flight school environment, which I don't think I would have done well if I was in that kind of environment. It's not kind of how I work.
Okay.
In this flying club that I was in, and I was a member at certain times with a bunch of different flying clubs at the airport. It was a really cool environment back then. I always tell people I felt like I had 50 big brothers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they were all amazing. There were guys that were former air traffic controllers, current and retired airline pilots. One guy was on the NTSB.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
One of my best friends, who was one of my mentors there, is now an executive at Cirrus. And so lots of these people just were really, really hardcore into it and just gave their all to teach me everything that they could.
Yeah.
And so I got my private, eventually after all that kind of stops and starts at the beginning, got my instrument. And then this dear friend of mine said to me one day, and he's like, Meredith, what do you want to do with this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm probably just take Dad flying and we'll go on trips, which we have done, which was awesome.
That's really cool.
But he's like, you really ought to think about being an instructor. I was like, come on, man, I haven't taught anybody anything. Never done any sort of teaching in my life. He's like, come on, trust me. So he egged me on, kept saying, come on, we'll go to get some coffee after work. Let's talk about this. And before I knew it, I gave my 2 weeks at my IT job and started hanging out at the airport, and I was all in.
No kidding. What did you enjoy about instructing? Because it is different. Right?
I enjoyed, the teaching part of it took some time to relate to.
Okay.
But I was more just immersed in the technical aspect of it. Like the first time that I actually saw what a mag looked like was when I started working on my commercial in CFI.
Yeah.
This mentor of mine, he would take me to the shop after work, be like, hey, Mare, here's a cylinder. And just, everything laid out on a table.
It makes a difference.
This is how it's made. And I was like, get out of town, that's what it looks like. And I just started really getting interested in the gearhead aspect of it.
Yeah.
And realizing that, if I can become an expert, or I want to be expert in these things, I can share that amazement with other people.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't so much that, like being a teacher that interested me, it was the sharing the joy that interested me. And that still holds true today. That's why we do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And how big is your business now? Like this?
Well, we've got a bunch of these.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And we're very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
I mean, what an admirable thing to do, and to be able to have the courage to put that together.
It took a lot, and my husband, who's not here, but he's at home with our daughter right now, he's been amazing. I mean, it's been a lot of sweat equity on his part and our part to make this happen. But totally worth it. I've been in the cubicle, and I did a lot of good work at those jobs and learned a lot, but just one day decided I wanted to be outside working with people more and sharing with them. And that's really what's great about this.
And I think that's really important to share with a lot of people, that, you could be in these positions of just what feels like normal, but if you have this interest in flying, the opportunities and possibilities are pretty much whatever you define, right?
And that's what's interesting about what's going on right now. The airline industry just in the past couple months went from
Yes.
boom to crash,
Yeah.
right? And now everybody's kind of waiting for the dust to settle and seeing what's gonna happen. And I have folks that come in here and say, what do you think the future holds? And I said, I don't have that crystal ball, but I will tell you this. If you love flying and you're open-minded,
Yeah.
you can keep going. There are
Yes.
people out there that need to get places,
Yes.
and you can take them there.
That's right.
I don't know in what or where,
Right.
but will always be a need for that.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
I think people are just going to have to think outside the box a little bit moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nick, do you have any advice for a father who has a daughter who might be showing interest in flying?
The best advice I could give is that there isn't anything that can or should hold you back.
Yeah.
The opportunities are all there, and they're open for any girl that wants to progress to any level that she wants to do. And I think I look at our military. I think our military is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
Now you see C-5A crews that all female.
Yeah.
I saw a C-130 crew that was all female on YouTube. The captain of of Fat Albert, the C-130 that the Blue Angels have as their support aircraft, was a lady commander.
Yeah.
So there's no limit.
No.
And I would say don't look at anything and see a closed door. Look at it and see an open door that takes you anywhere you want to go.
I love that. Yeah. And especially this month is Girls in Aviation Day for Women in Aviation International, and there's also the EAA has fly-offs to take daughters and sons too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity to introduce the idea.
Yep.
Absolutely. And Meredith, any advice for any girl or woman who's interested in flying?
I would say stop thinking of it as a girl or boy thing. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because when I was growing up, mom and dad never said, oh, you should do this or that. They just always said, whatever you want to do, you just go after it all you can. Like, dad never pushed me to be a pilot. I don't know if you ever remember you saying at all, are you going to take flying lessons? Never. It was just, if you want to do it, great. If you don't, that's great. Just whatever you do, put your heart and soul into it, whatever that is. And so, I personally think that flying is a great way for any kid, any young person to learn about science, technology, responsibility.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Decision making, risk management. Things that you and I know, that we know as pilots are so critical, but aren't necessarily being taught or emphasized out there today.
I think you made a comment the other day about risk management.
Yes, and so I think any young person could do well by exploring this, whether or not they want to continue as a career. I think they can do whatever they want, but I think the act of learning about it and trying it has a lot of value.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I really appreciate you all both joining me today.
Sure.
And and thank you for sharing your story. Hopefully it helps someone, a young girl or something, some person to get involved, even just the smallest little bit. And it's really cool that you have this as a family. Yeah.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
One thing about us, both of us, we'll talk to anybody and any time about aviation.
Right?
That's right.
For as long as you want.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen.